If the elephant in the room is never addressed, it's bound to affect those outside of it. I'm your host, Eli Maxon, and this is episode 6 of Illustrator Diaries. This is going to be a very lengthy video, and it's actually going to be the first time we're highlighting a film, that being Elephant, 2003, directed by Gus Van Sant, executive produced by Diane Keaton, and the cinematographer was Harris Savides. So this was an HBO film that was inspired by the media's, I guess you would say, takeaway of the Columbine shooting. So this is not an entertaining breakdown or anything for that matter. And the reason as to why the film was made was also to highlight that this is not an entertaining event. So I want to give a disclaimer. This is a very serious video. The visual breakdown is of one of the characters, John, who is the character on the front of the advertisement, or I guess you would say cover for the film. So he's not the main character. There really isn't a main character, but the film takes place all on the same day at different times. These people's lives intersecting through a high school setting. And the casting was actually that of actual high schoolers, which I found helped the film to be more realistic, as it kind of brought me back to my high school days, just about how I would be roaming through the hallways, going from this class to the next, going to lunch. The film really captured that extremely well. And it took place in Portland, so a suburban kind of environment, diverse backgrounds, different personalities. And you're really getting to see these people's, how would I say, life, habits, and just what was going on the last day of some of those people's lives pan out. And I do want to read a quick quote that the producer happened to say on the Charlie Rose show back in 2003. It said, "What happens when a film isn't made for entertainment, but rather for..." Oh, actually, this is something I wrote down, so I apologize. I'm going to cut that part out. So Deanne Keaton, the executive producer, happened to say, "The key thing for me about this movie is that it begs you to listen to the silence. It's everything we avoid in ourselves. We all have this dark quality. There's this violence in all of us. To think, to ponder, to sit in it for a while." And as a believer, that element, of course, as I happen to follow Christ, is that of sin, right? Sin is that inherent quality that causes us to cause harm to others. And it may be physical, it may not be physical. In this unfortunate scenario, it was very much physical, and it happened to end a lot of the cast's lives in the movie, right? So, all that being said, my takeaway from the film initially, I hadn't watched it a second time. I just watched it one time. But before I listened to the interviews and the director's thoughts and intentions for making it, it was long and dragged out, in the sense that that is how life is. It's mundane. It's very dragged out. It feels routine. It feels dull. But in the midst of the dullness of life, we can lose sight of the charm that is in life. You know, the skills that we may have. Elias, one of the characters, happens to be a photographer, and he loves to take, photos for his portfolio. You could see that he's very, in tune with the process of, I forget it, but like the dark room, and like, just the whole process of what it takes to put film together, which I found to be an interesting part in the movie, just to see that process. You also have John, who his father was a drunk, and he was just trying to make sure that he got home okay. And John, you can see that it weighs on him, even though it isn't fully explained, the totality of, his entire situation. And none of these characters really have, I guess you would say, like the typical cinematic exposition. It's just that we're going through this particular day in their lives. Um, so yeah, um, one of the other characters I have her written down, Michelle. She was very much similar to Alex, who was one of the shooters in the film. And Alex, we see he gets bullied by one of the characters he happens to kill in the film, um, Nathan. But before we get to, just jumping all over the place, I want to highlight Michelle for a second because Michelle, similar to Alex, this mundane theme in the film is just how we can overlook our day to day. We can overlook how other people may, what's the word? Be affected by the actions we happen to pit towards them, the actions we don't take towards them as far as like being available, um, can also be just us being oblivious to what's going on around us. One of the characters that it really aggravated me to see him get killed because he was compassionate in the sense that he was trying to help people. And we really didn't get too much of his character, only seeing him play football in the beginning and then at the end trying to help one of the girls out of the school was Benny, the black character with the cornrows. I would assume he's an athlete. We see him roaming the halls, seeing what's going on, and he decides to go behind one of the shooters, Eric, and gets shot and killed. While he turns around. So that part really aggravated me because that could have been easily avoidable. But then it's like there's this real life scenario going on. We don't know too much about Benny's character and his morale. So was he thinking that he could save the principal or just save more people in the school? We don't know. And yeah, I want to go over Alex and Eric for a second. Eric is, if you watch the film, a very stereotypical school shooter. Like he's what we would expect the school shooter to be. Our first introduction to him is him walking into Alex's room, and he happens to acknowledge that Alex, is really good at playing the piano, and the first thing he does is he gets on the bed, gets on a laptop, and is playing a shooter game, and that is kind of foreshadowing of what eventually is going to happen. And this is the really isolated scene of, well, I wouldn't even say isolated, but isolated to Alex and Eric, of course. But this is a very key scene into his character. And then there's another scene where Eric, before he shoots Benny, he's talking to, actually this is after he shoots Benny. He tells the principal that he'll spare his life, and of course he's lying. But he says that, you could have helped us sooner. There's more like us. Alluding to other school shooters that would eventually come about. And like I said, the very much stereotypical school shooter that the media would portray. And ironically, Eric gets killed by Alex. And the reason as to why I waited to speak on Alex is because Alex, I would say, is in a way the central theme of the story, at least from my perspective. Alex is not your typical school shooter. We see that he gets bullied, yes, we do. But we see that his value and really his personality is shown on the piano when he goes home. His room, I love how the cinematographer shot that scene because it shows pretty much Alex's universe. Like, I probably have to go back and look at every picture, but he's extremely skilled at drawing. I'm an artist myself, of course, so I thought that was pretty dope. And we just see these little hints of his character and where he could have gone had it not gotten to what it got to at the end of the film with them, killing everybody, right? And Alex doesn't die in this film. Alex, the last scene we see is of him about to kill Nathan and his girlfriend, right? I think it's Connie. And I say all this to say the film isn't about entertainment. The film is more so about introspection, and to the point of what Diane Keaton happened to say, analyzing that potential of evil that we all have inside of us, and a discussion on how people get there, right? And of course, sometimes it's not even understanding the why, it's understanding how it can be prevented. And there's a lot of avenues we can go down on how we can be more present with people. Like, one thing I thought about was how Alex's mother was, in a way, somewhat dismissive, but we never see Alex's father. Does he have a father? We don't know. And then there's a very unsettling part in this movie too with Alex and Eric. I'm not going to get into it. It's a very much sexual thing. Of course, as a believer, I already have my own viewpoints on it, which I'm not going to get into. But even besides that, I think just generally the average viewer, like, knowing what these people are about to go and commit in the midst of doing that, it's like, it's a very sinister type of thing. Like, these are people that are lost, and there's no telling what got them there. So it's just a lot. There's a lot in this film that it leaves you pondering the human condition and, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of how you happen to treat people, being aware of, it could be your last day on this planet. Like, there's just so much in this film that, as a creative, I appreciate it from an artist standpoint. And as a believer, how would I happen to navigate and, be a light to people that, for lack of a better terms, may share similar beliefs of my own or are very much different than me. Like, and, that's the reason as to why I made this channel for creatives, is because we have to be clever in how we happen to navigate the creative space. There's actually something else I kind of want to talk about too. And let me get it here. I apologize. Gus Van Sant said, "The proverb of the blind man touching the elephant. One thinks it's a wall, one thinks it's a tree, another thinks it's a leg, one thinks it's a snake because it has hold of the tail." That describes this film, because there's many ways in which Alex and Eric and, all of these characters, but particularly Alex, I feel like watching this film, Alex was the most intriguing to me because of the fact that it's like you really can't pinpoint why he would do what he did, especially with how the film ended with him killing his co-partner. Like, it was just a crazy film. And, instantly when I think of that proverb too, like, as a believer, I always go back to Cain and Abel. Like, we have these things, but to take away someone else's life, like, your state of mind has to be different. Like, it has to be gone, There's this moral crossroad that it's like a point of no return, in the sense that, like, the decision you're about to make is not reversible whatsoever. And it's a very extreme, very, very extreme decision, right? Crazy. But yeah, I really don't even know how to end this film. I mean, not film. I don't know how to end this video. So all I can say is just be aware, be a light. Don't view art simply as just entertainment. but view it as a means to reach those who, for a lack of a better terms, may never step foot in a church building because of, hurt, because of, history with individuals who allowed their own moral judgments to interfere with that of the one true God in the midst of that moment. And yeah, that's really all I got. I'm your host, Eli Maxson. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm out.